Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Inside Job podcast, Healed from the Inside Out. I am Candice Porter, and I'm actually sitting in Nate's seat because what we doing today, we switching it up. I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Nate Battle.
I can still mess this up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on, everybody?
Absolutely. You know what is going on, Nate?
What is that?
So we're here today because April is Sexual Awareness Month.
Sexual assault.
Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Yes.
Yeah, because Sexual Awareness Month is just the work that you do.
Right. And that can be every day.
Woo! Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Yes, it is.
Now we felt it really appropriate to come in and have this conversation because you're looking at two women who know this situation very well. And so Nate, we're just going to talk about it a little bit. How do you feel about that?
I'm open. Let's go.
I love that. I love everything about that. And I just wanted to start out with a little statistics, okay?
Yes,
because I think that when we hear about sexual assault, we may not know the impact and we may not know exactly how big it is, especially for women. Especially for women. So I just wanted to say that in the United States, an estimated 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men have been raped at some point. Okay, that's rape, all right? Now, approximately 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men have experienced some form of sexual violence in their lifetime. Okay, so we're looking at those statistics already.
That's so unfortunate.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So women already are leading the charts on this type of assault. So Nate, can you just talk me through how you feel about those statistics at all?
It's sad. You know what? It breaks my heart. Not that I would want the men to be up there with us or anything like that, but it just breaks my heart that it's happening, just period. Yeah. But it doesn't surprise me that the stats show that it's happening more to women than men, or our men aren't talking about it. So you can't report it. If you ain't talking about it, it's not registering as a stat.
Okay. Thank you so much for bringing that perspective because you're absolutely right. Like the numbers are probably lower because men probably are not talking about it. Which is the whole situation with it. That's a whole nother conversation, child.
I think we're held at a different image when men are assaulted versus women, because then you have so much more into play. You know, they get called different names, which is ironic, right? So we don't get called gay or anything like that when we've been assaulted, be it by a man or a woman. But men, they get, oh man, you gay now. All those, unfortunate names that they are called. When it was not their fault, It's not like they chose to do anything like that. So.
And so no wonder they're not talking about it.
Facts.
Because they're fearing what comes after that,
That's
right?
Correct.
And that alone is like, man. So the statistics could be where men and women could be neck and neck, but we just don't know because men probably aren't speaking about it. Nate. Alrighty, on a podcast that you had earlier, last year, we got together and I talked to you about my sexual assault story. And when we started talking about that, you then shared some things with me about your sexual assault story. Yes. See, that's the exchange. Women don't necessarily have a problem with speaking about it, right?
Right.
And you really shared some really valuable, I'll say valuable now, because it was hurtful still to hear that it happened. And I just want to kind of get into your story today and talk through that. I want to talk about the way that you were able, what happened, how you were able to journey through that and the triumph after it. Okay. So awesome. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, Nate?
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm going to give a brief of it because, as you know, I wrote a book.
Yes, you did.
It's in the book.
It's in the book.
I would really like for people to be able to get it and read it in its fullness.
Absolutely.
If I share the whole bang and kaboom now,
nope. What's the reason? Yeah, no. We're definitely touching on it for just a little bit so that y'all can run out and get this book when it's time, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, but first of all, Kandice, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
You know, when you brought this to me, I was hesitant. Not because, I mean, the story is going to be out there.
Sure.
Because it just is. And I don't have a problem sharing my story.
Absolutely.
I didn't want to be in this seat.
She didn't. She did. Wait, you interviewing me? Yes, me interviewing you.
Because you know what the thing is that I can tell my story and I can talk about it.
Sure.
But sometimes when people come with questions,
sometimes
it stumps me like, I wasn't ready for that.
Yes.
So that was the hesitation. But I don't mind sharing, none whatsoever. So my sexual assault started with molestation. I was around 5 years old. And it started there with an uncle that we had to call uncle.
Did you say 5?
5.
Okay.
I was 5 years old. Now, I don't go into great detail about what he was doing because I really wanted the book to be focused on the healing part of it.
Absolutely.
My pastor once taught me no one is enough. The details aren't always necessary. In a certain job, details are important.
Yes.
But in this particular situation, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, it started out just what some people would think is just innocent, you know, sitting on your uncle's lap. And then it just going into more graphic detail about then what he was beginning to do and all this stuff. That lasted maybe for about, the molestation lasted for me till maybe about 12.
Okay. 5 to 12?
5 to 12.
Oh my goodness.
And in between that, Kandice, so when I talked about it could be at the hands of men and women, it started out with my uncle. I'm not going to call him uncle. Well, we had to call him uncle.
Okay.
It was a family friend we called uncle. And it started out with him. But it soon went into a woman who wanted to get her pleasure or her gratification on watching me and her children. And so that was in between 5 and 12. It was him doing this, and then it was her doing this. 13, he took it a step further. It then became rape at knife point. And that lasted maybe about 5 or 6 years.
So was it rape at knife point every time? Or
rape at knife point every time because there was a threat with it. It was don't tell. If you tell, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill your mother, and I'm going to kill your sisters. So he used it for leverage so that I wouldn't tell. Because at this point, you know, we wasn't in no relationship. So I didn't want this. I'm 13 years old.
Yes.
And who wants that?
Are you saying that it was the same person this whole time?
This whole time.
Wow, Nate. Okay.
As I was young.
Okay.
You know, jumping forward, you know, there were, unfortunately, I used to think that I had a magnet that said, you know, take me. I'm easy. You can have it, and I ain't gonna tell. Right? I really did feel that way because that was just 2 of the many that I had in my life. Totality was probably about, well, probably it was, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 actual rapes. Okay. 1 incest, and then the molestation. So it's all this sexual trauma that I endured for
years.
Since I was, you know, for 5 years.
Oh my goodness. So with the other kids that you were with, like what was that like? Did it seem like something that was familiar to them, or was it like new? Like how was that? Like did it seem like this is something that they were used to?
You know, I was young, so hindsight, looking back, it looked like it was familiar to them. It looked like it was familiar to them. And I can tell you the reason why I think that is because I remember a time that we were at our house. She came over to our house, and we got caught messing around with each other. It was normal. For me, it was normal at that point. I was just like, I'm only doing what I've been doing for all these years. So it became something that I just did, until my sisters caught us. And then they were like, oh, you nasty. And, I didn't, I'm young, so I didn't have the bandwidth to be like, no, this is what I've been doing. We've been doing this. Every time I'm over there, we doing this. This is nothing new. So how she would, without going into detail or whatever, but she would just instruct us to do things to one another.
Okay.
And so we did it.
Yeah.
We just kept doing whatever she said do. Again, until we got to a point where we were just doing it without her.
Wow. So being that your sisters didn't even know shows me that you were keeping that code of silence and not even saying anything. How were you dealing with keeping that something so heavy? How were you dealing with that and keeping that at such a young age?
You know what? I wasn't. My mother knew something was going on with her baby girl. She had me in therapy at a very young age. She just thought, like something going on with this baby.
Sure.
I was very paranoid about a lot of things. I still am. I startle very easily and all that, but that's, it just kind of comes with it. But she never knew. But she suspected. And so I went to therapy, but because of the threat of you better not tell because I'm going to kill you and all this, I didn't even tell the therapist. So it really wasn't helpful therapy. We dealt with the fears of stuff. I mean, when I'm talking about paranoid over everything and just afraid of living, afraid of life, we kind of tried to walk through some of those things. But I honestly, Candice, I didn't deal with it until I was good in my high 30s. And that was the first time I ever told a therapist. I told a therapist. And
wow.
I never told my mother. My mother left here in 2012. She never knew.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, she never knew.
Did you, when your mom would suspect things like, how did you cover? Just by redirection of conversation or?
Candice, she never asked if that happened. She never asked, was someone messing with me? And no knock against my mother. I have one of the best mothers in this world. I don't recall her ever asking if that happened. So I didn't have to talk about it. We dealt with the symptoms of what I was dealing with. We dealt with the fear, like I said, crying all the time, being sensitive. Then all of that turned into anger. So why are you so mad? I would get that question, like, why are you so angry? Why are you fighting all the time? I fought so I expressed myself like through anger.
Sure.
And that's how I dealt with it.
Okay, so in school it came out. Is that okay? So in school it was with a lot of fights.
A lot of fights.
The reason why I'm asking you this is because I'm hopeful that we can start looking at some of these symptoms in our kids, right?
On. Yes.
Because there are parents who don't want to ask the questions because they already probably know the answer. And I'm just wondering, like, because this was a family member, friend, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, I feel like we try to kind of overlook some things. Because then that means that we're going to, as parents, have to deal with it as well.
Absolutely.
And so my goal is, that's what I'm asking you about, kind of like what some of your behaviors were around that time.
Oh, no problem.
So that we can start
looking for it.
You know what I'm saying? Just in case our kids are in that position
Same
where,
situation.
So.
Because I know, like, for you, and I know that mine isn't the only one who's had the threat with it. How yours came out, you were able to go and tell, like, "Ooh, this happened to me."
Yes.
But it just wasn't that way for me because of the threat. So immediately, my power was taken away, my voice was taken away, and so, I just dealt with it. And it took a long time for me to actually really, honestly be like, who am I? Yeah. Because that's who I was with all of that trauma. That's how I identified myself as, like,
godly.
Yeah. So if you can imagine, inside of that, there was the hopelessness, the not wanting to be here, and just wishing, like, somebody just kill me. At one point, I remember wanting him to just look. Maybe I should just tell so he can kill me, and then I don't have to live with this. I don't have to deal with this anymore.
Wow, Nate. I can only imagine, like, from you being so young, because that's so young, just the way that you had to navigate life and feeling isolated, right?
Very.
And like you can't go and talk to people because then it's a threat on your life, right?
Yes, and my mothers and my sisters.
And
imagine carrying that burden. I'm holding someone else's life in my hands. So even though I was young and I didn't have, the capacity to be like, my life, their life, I didn't think about that. But as I got older and I was able to, kind of sift through that, I thought it was more selfish if I told.
Sure.
Because, my mother was a great mother. She did the best that she could for us. She made a lot of sacrifices. She did so much for us. And then in her latter part of life, when she got sick, there was no way I was going to add that.
Absolutely not.
So I carried all of that burden. And unfortunately, including his. Because I didn't want his wife to find out. I didn't want his children to be heard about it. And so it's a bad space to have someone be in.
So walk me through. So this was 5 to 12, 13. You said it started being at knife point. When you got into your younger adult ages, how did this part of your life affect you as a young adult?
Yeah, good question. So, sometimes when people are sexually assaulted, they tend to be promiscuous. They tend to be either a reoffender. They do the same thing. I definitely did not offend, hurt anyone in that manner. I've never taken anything from anybody. And promiscuous, I probably was to a degree. I like to say it was more like a down low thing because I wasn't like a streetwalker or anything like that. But what I did, and I do have this in the book, is I became an exotic dancer. And I was doing phone sex. That for me was undercover, being acting out that behavior, using that energy for to deal with it. And because the field was so welcoming, no one's going to wonder or ask me, hey, why are you doing this? Are you doing this because you have been sexually assaulted for half of your entire life? Or is this just what you want to do? And so I just never really had to answer those questions. I just lived my life that way.
Wow.
And spent the energy in dancing. And the phone sex. And then as I got older doing that, it became gross. And I just didn't want to do it no more. And so then that brought on some more like, what am I supposed to do? Because I knew I wasn't going to go out and be with a bunch of different people. And I knew that I was not going to go harm anyone.
Yeah.
So it left me with a big battle of what am I supposed to do with this hurt and trauma.
And trauma that's deeply embedded in you.
Deeply embedded.
From such a young age. Now, listen, I because there's always two sides to every story, okay?
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate you digging into those beginning years. But we also understand that because of this, it was a turning point for you. There was a turning point for you. And like you said, you just segued into it. It was gross, right?
Yeah.
I was no longer getting that fulfillment from what I was doing. And so I want to talk about the turnaround. I want to talk about when you said, you want to know what? It's time for me to really start uprooting this seed and moving into new territory in my life. What did that look like for you?
So I never really wanted to do the dancing, and I never wanted to do the phone sex. I've always thought it was
okay.
I just did it. You know what I'm saying? When it's almost like it groomed me, and that's just that part.
Yes.
Right. But a turning point for me, Kandice, was I actually had attempted suicide several times. More than several times. I really, really wanted out of the turmoil. And at the time my mother was still alive, I wasn't going to say anything. So I would rather had just been dead than have to hurt her and tell her about that. Yes. It wasn't until after she died is when I really opened up and said, either I'm going to die or this got to come up out of here. And so I started therapy on my own, and it was really intense therapy. And I fell several times because by this time I had started drinking.
Yeah.
I had started doing like prescription drugs.
Okay.
I would, I have a bad back. But my back wasn't hurting all of the time.
Hello.
But
that's right.
The drugs helped me to numb the feelings and the emotions behind that. But after so long, enough is enough. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so relationships were ruined. Though, now some of those relationships, they need to own some of their stuff too.
Hello. Okay.
I wasn't the fault of all of this.
Hello.
But I do recognize the role that I played in some of it. But I did therapy. I was like 3 days a week. I had a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and then I had a psychotherapist.
Okay, Nate.
Yeah, and I did that intensely 3 times a week. And then from there, I started building a relationship with God. Starting to know who I was, or who God said that I was, aside of who all the stuff that I had encountered said I was. That's the one I knew. So it was almost like I had a clean slate to understand and build a new me almost, right? I had to let go of all of that. And so when you see the book talking about healed inside out, piece by piece.
Piece by piece.
There were literally pieces.
That's it.
That I had to deal with individually.
Yes.
To get to a whole Nate. And so I credit my tenacity, if you will, to continue with the therapy, even though, again, like I said, I fell down, because it's okay to fall down.
Yes, it is.
Let's make that clear.
Yes.
That I didn't just jump in this thing and it was like easy.
Yes.
It was hard as hell.
Absolutely.
And, but I did the work. And I did the work. And even when I fell down, I did more work. Like, what made me want to go back here? Why? Oh, that part ain't dealt with. So, and when I tell you it took years, Kandice, it took years. It took a lot of years. I went through so many deliverances. I attended several deliverance conferences. Yes. And the thing about deliverance is that the enemy will still have that stuff come back up. And so for a moment there, I didn't think it worked. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, but that was my lack of understanding. I didn't understand how it worked. Okay. I thought if I'm going through this deliverance process and it's coming out, don't come back and bother me.
Get out. Okay.
Like, what you coming back
yes.
for? I didn't understand that it's a continuous work.
It is.
You have to maintain it.
You have to maintain it.
You have to maintain it.
Can you talk to me about the maintenance? What did that maintenance look like for you? Because listen, we can go through all the things.
Yes.
But if you're not maintaining,
yes,
then it's not going to be sustainable.
Facts. Mm-mm. You know, so what that looked like for me is I would attend the conferences just because.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I would just keep up, get my tune up. I would go there. I did a lot of writing.
Okay.
A lot of writing.
Yes.
You look in my garage right now, I have boxes and boxes of writing. Yes. Just pouring out.
Absolutely.
When things would come up, I'd write it out. Then I started doing things like helping other people. Mm-hmm. So serving really played a huge role in my healing process. Being able to help people get through their things, even though I may not have been all the way there. Not everyone knew that. I wore it well. I learned how to hide that stuff. Yeah. Unfortunately, at the young age, so you couldn't really tell, right? But we did. I did the work, and helping other people get through it. That was that process. So those three things: serving, just continuing to go to the conferences and write. Yes. And then God.
Listen, that it's so important that I always hear people say that you don't get rid of something, you have to replace it. Yeah. Right? You have to replace it with something else because it's not clockwork. It's not just going to go away just like that, like you said. Mm-hmm. And I love to hear that you actually replaced it with something else, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To those who may be in that position, that 5-year-old Nate, that 7-year-old Nate, that 10-year-old Nate who wasn't able to be vocal, right? Mm-hmm. What would you say to your younger self right now in regards to the sexual assault period of your life?
Yeah. Eesh. There's a portion in my book that talks about love. One of the pieces is love. Yeah. And I would really push, we got to love ourselves.
We do.
Not that I didn't love myself, and that was the reason why I couldn't tell.
Yes.
But I think knowing that now, I really push in my children and I push in my grandkids the importance of loving ourselves. Yes. That is, that's so concrete. Yes, it is. It really is the foundation of how we move. That's you got to have that love, and it starts with us. It starts on the inside, right?
Absolutely.
God is love and God is within us.
Absolutely.
We got to pull on that. And we got to know that so that when we are faced with obstacles or adversity or whatever, we can pull from that space. And so I wish, again, not a knock against my mother, but I wish I would have had that type of foundation.
That's right.
Then I would have maybe been more confident or comfortable, like, even though he said he was going to do it, I believe higher.
Yes.
And then this is the thing. If you do it, you just do it. Yeah. Unfortunately, but at least I did it. And I'm not saying not doing this to anybody. I'm not saying it doesn't make you courageous. Doesn't make you a coward to not speak up.
Sure.
But I would have had the courage then to be able to say something. And then just standing on a belief that, God got me.
Yes.
And
that is not your fault.
And that is not my fault. That part. That's a hard part for sexual assault victims is to manage that not your fault part.
It's not your fault. Because I know that sometimes, especially with women, they'll, when we hear about rape or molestation, well, what did you have on?
Yes.
Or what kind of energy were you giving him?
Yeah.
Were you, making yourself look available for that?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Which is ignorant.
Right? But just to hear, it's not your fault. That these people they have some situations going on, right? And you just happen to be caught in the middle of it, unfortunately.
But you know what I will say? I like to look at the challenges that I went through as what was meant for evil. God has turned that thing around
For all the good.
Yes. Being what I do now as a life coach and as an intimacy coach, to be able to fall back on some of that, and it just, it's all good.
God, Nate, it is all good. It is all good. Yeah. And I'm really grateful for this conversation, especially because I'm thinking from a parent standpoint. I'm thinking about those signs. I'm thinking about that, those undertones that we may be missing.
Yes.
Because we're just not taking the time to dig, and life is busy. And but I wanted to thank you for that. And I'm hopeful that when parents hear this, that should they have an intuition, a discerning spirit that something is going on, that they take the time to sit their kid down and say, listen, I've been noticing some crazy stuff going on with you. What's going on? And I love that you said your mom had you in therapy at a young age. And I also love that you said, I'm not knocking my mom for any of it. Yeah. Because people try to point the blame.
Yes.
They try to point the blame off of themselves because they don't want to believe that it's me.
Yes.
So then they start pointing the blame. So, Nate, any final thoughts that you want to leave?
You know what I would say, be mindful that sometimes when children go into like seclusion, just leave me alone. I don't feel like being bothered. Get out of my room. Period. I don't want to go talk to my friends. Right. I don't want to go hang out. That's a huge telltale sign. I played a lot by myself. And so, it gets misinterpreted because they're like, oh, she's a loner. She don't want to deal with nobody. She got a bad attitude. She got, when that's not necessarily it. There was a war going on the inside that I couldn't let out. And so it's the best way is not to be around anybody so that I don't have to let it out, or so that people don't have to ask me. I get to keep it. So be mindful that, a child that just doesn't want to be, that just wants to be in seclusion, you might want to dig a little bit. And nowadays we like to give our children freedom, and it's just like, I just let them do them, and we can still poke and pry, and we can still, like you say, have that spirit, that discerning spirit to recognize, nah, you just seem off.
Yeah. You're my child. You're off.
You're off. And then, I started fighting. Like, just out of nowhere, I'm just mad at the world. There's a reason why these children are mad. There's something. I'm not saying that all of them are associated with sexual assault. But be mindful of your children. Be mindful of their behaviors, especially when it shifts.
That's right.
I don't know anybody who wants to just be by themselves. Kids like to play.
They do.
Kids like to play.
Absolutely.
And I get it. Maybe there are a handful that's just kind of, personalities are introverted and they don't want to deal with a lot of folks.
Absolutely.
Just watch it. Just watch that space.
Just watch it.
The crying, I can imagine how my mother felt I cried a lot. So, and then once you learn how to mask, oh, I'm just not feeling well. Oh, I'm just tired. Oh, I didn't get bullied at school, but I'd use it as an excuse. It was deflection.
It was deflection.
So,
listen, I am a big proponent of giving people their flowers. And Nate, I really want to thank you for doing the work and trusting God, knowing that He was going to bring you out on the other side. Even on the days where you were like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I just want to commend you for taking it step by step and day by day, because I was able to take a deeper look into your story. And so I'm familiar with your story and how you were able to pick yourself up literally and move on, and that you were able to take the work, right, or even the trauma, I'll say, and use it for your work today. That's not something that I'm just going to just overlook and be like, oh, okay, girl, that's cool. But to say that you really took the time to work this process out and invest in yourself to make sure that you can be the Nate you are today is highly, highly commendable.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for your vulnerability, your transparency, your authenticity today.
Thank you.
And for beautifully articulating your story in the only way that you can.
Only I can.
Because can't nobody else tell it like you.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that you took the time on your platform to do just that.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's important.
it is.
Not everybody's going to get the book. Not everybody's going to see this, but maybe somebody will see this and that won't have the book, or vice versa, just knowing about it. And I would just like to offer, I'll leave my information on what I do as a life coach and as an intimacy coach. I'll leave that there for somebody who may just want someone to talk to about it. That I had that to offer. So thank you. But let me just mention, since you touched it, you poked it.
I did.
Kandice helped me do some editing on my book. So she did have the opportunity to read the book.
That's right. That's right.
And so thank you for picking up on that.
Absolutely.
As you read,
it
was some work.
It was some work.
And I'm not saying that the type of work that I did will work for the next person.
Sure.
But if it just helps one person.
That's it.
And that I know that it will. When I share my story with other women or with other people, they're like, oh, I can't wait to read the book. I can't wait. I know somebody who I know this would be good for. And so I'm really excited for that to come past. So I'm grateful that you got to see that other side.
Me too.
To be able to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And know where it comes from.
Absolutely. Right. And I can't wait to come back on and talk about the book.
Yes, we're going to do that.
Yes. So many good things in the book. And that actually, God, I was like, I'm just editing. Why am I mixed up in this? Like, okay, God, okay, I'll do the work too. Dang. So that's just the power of your words and your story and the book. So I cannot wait to come back on here. And Nate, I think our time is up.
You know what? I wish we had more time. Right? Because we have to scoot through this stuff. And this isn't a scoot through subject.
It's not, it's not, Nate.
But that's where, also, you can tell me if not, but you have a platform as well that people can come to and share their stories. People can come to you and talk about it.
That's right. That's right.
This isn't just kind of left here.
No.
In a short time span.
That's right.
And how dare we just have 1 month?
How dare? Didn't we just read the statistics at the beginning?
Yes.
Like,
we all can't fit in that 1 month.
Hello?
But nonetheless, if we know people,
that's right,
who we're able to walk through that on a daily basis.
That's right.
We're here for you.
That's right. You're not alone. You're not alone.
You are not alone. You're not alone.
So thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Candice. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining the Inside Job podcast.
Thank you.
I am your host today, Candice Porter, but normally it is Nate Battle. And we are going to make sure that through these words and through actions and that people are really going to be healed from the inside out.
Amen.
Yep.
And on that note, thank you for tuning in with us, and we'll see you later.
Peace, peace. Thank you.